Okay, so we're going deep today. Specifically those verses in Surah Al-Baqarah that paint this like incredible picture of paradise.
Right. The descriptions are just so
Vivid, evocative, I don't even know the right word.
all of the above.
Uh-huh.
And that's where the Tafsir al-Amthal comes in. It gives us this whole other layer of understanding.
It's like it unlocks these hidden dimensions within the verses.
It's pretty amazing.
So shall we jump right in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so verse 25. It starts by saying, "And give glad tidings to those who believe and do righteous deeds, that for them are gardens beneath which rivers flow." I mean, right away you get the sense of
Tranquility.
abundance.
Yeah.
Like a paradise that's just beyond.
Our earthly comprehension almost.
Totally. And then it continues. "Every time they are provided with a fruit therefrom as provision, they will say, 'This is what we were provided with before,' and it is brought to them in resemblance. And they will have therein purified spouses, and they will abide therein eternally."
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there.
Right. Like, what's the deal with the fruits?
Well, the Tafsir al-Amthal actually offers a couple of different interpretations of that line. This is what we were provided with before. One idea is that the blessings in paradise are a direct reflection of
The deeds we do in this life.
precisely, like the good we do here gets mirrored in the blessings we receive there.
Oh, that's interesting. But there's another interpretation too, right?
Yeah, and this one's a little mind-bending. It suggests that the fruits themselves taste different each time, even if they look the same.
Wait, what? So it's the same fruit, but a totally different experience every time.
It's like the delights of paradise are constantly renewing themselves, always fresh, always surprising.
Wow, that's next level.
It really makes you question our whole understanding of pleasure and satisfaction. Like, what if even our senses are heightened in paradise? What if we're capable of experiencing things on a whole other level?
I mean, that would be incredible. And then there's that part about the purified spouses.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Okay, so the emphasis on purity here is really important. The Tafsir al-Amthal makes it clear that this purity isn't just about
Physical appearance.
right. It goes way beyond that. It's about inner qualities, about spiritual purity.
It was not just about outward beauty, but about a deeper connection. Like
The
a,
resonance of souls.
yeah, exactly. And there's actually this hadith from the prophet that illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, I love the hadith. Which one is it?
He said, "Beware of the greenery and filthy soil." And when he was asked to explain, he said, "A beautiful woman from a bad environment."
Whoa, that's pretty powerful.
It is right. It's like a warning against being deceived by outward appearances. The real beauty, the lasting beauty, comes from within.
And that's what paradise is all about, right? It's a reflection of that inner purity.
So we've got these vivid descriptions of gardens, rivers, fruits, these purified spouses, all pointing to this incredibly blissful existence.
But it's not just about material pleasures, right? There's this whole other dimension that's woven throughout these verses.
The spiritual dimension.
Exactly. Like that line about abiding in paradise eternally, that highlights the everlasting nature of these blessings. It's a stark contrast to...
The fleeting nature of worldly pleasures.
Totally. And it elevates the concept of paradise beyond just physical comfort.
It suggests a deeper fulfillment, a profound spiritual connection.
And that connection with Allah is ultimately the greatest reward. Remember verse 29? It says, "Allah has promised the believing men and believing women gardens beneath which rivers flow, wherein they abide eternally, and pleasant dwellings in gardens of perpetual residence. But approval from Allah is greater. It is that which is the great attainment."
That verse always gives me chills. It's a reminder that true happiness, true contentment, comes from Allah's pleasure.
It's like all the blessings of paradise are a manifestation of that divine approval.
And it's not just about passively receiving those blessings either, right?
No, absolutely not. The Tafsir al-Amthal really emphasizes the importance of faith and deeds.
It's like we have to earn those rewards.
It's not about earning exactly, it's more about alignment. Like, our faith should naturally lead to righteous actions. It's like a tree, you need strong roots to bear good fruit.
That's a great analogy. So our faith is like the roots and our deeds are the fruit.
Exactly. And just as a tree needs healthy roots to thrive and produce nourishing fruit, our faith needs to be strong and vibrant to lead us towards
Righteousness. Goodness.
all of that. It's about aligning our inner beliefs with our outward actions.
Creating a harmonious balance between the spiritual and the physical.
Exactly.
So it's not enough to just believe. We have to live that belief through our actions.
Precisely. And while someone without faith might occasionally do something good, the Tafsir al-Amthal makes it clear that true, consistent righteousness comes from a deep-rooted faith.
It's like that faith becomes the driving force behind our choices. shaping our character and guiding our actions.
Right. It becomes an intrinsic part of who we are.
So verse 25 lays out this amazing foundation, this vision of paradise with its incredible blessings, both material and spiritual. But it also highlights the importance of faith and deeds, that connection between our inner beliefs and our outward actions.
And it sets the stage for what comes next, which is a bit of a curveball.
A curveball? What do you mean?
Well, verse 26 throws in an example that you might not expect. It says, "Indeed, Allah is not ashamed to present an example of a mosquito or what is above it."
A mosquito? Out of all the incredible things Allah could have chosen, why a mosquito?
Right. It seems a little strange at first, but the Tafsir al-Amthal explains that the reason behind this seemingly odd choice lies in the objections that some people had to the examples used in the previous verses. They were like, why would Allah use such simple, everyday examples? It's like they thought he was somehow above that.
So this verse is a direct response to that kind of thinking.
Exactly. It's challenging that limited understanding of what constitutes a worthy example.
It's like Allah saying, I can use whatever example I want and it'll still be profound.
Exactly. The value of an example isn't about how grand or impressive it seems to us. It's about its ability to convey a deeper meaning.
So in the case of the mosquito, what's that deeper meaning?
It's about recognizing the incredible complexity and power of Allah's creation, even in something as tiny and seemingly insignificant as a mosquito.
Okay, now I'm really curious to hear what the Tafsir al-Amthal has to say about this.
Well, it dives into some fascinating details about the mosquito's creation. It quotes Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, who said that despite its small size, Allah created within it everything He created in the elephant, along with 2 additional limbs.
Whoa! I've never thought about it that way.
Right, it's mind-blowing. And Imam Jafar al-Sadiq went on to say that Allah intended to draw the believer's attention to the precision of His creation and the marvels of His craftsmanship.
So even in this tiny creature, we see the evidence of Allah's infinite power and wisdom.
Exactly, and it shifts our perspective on the world around us. It encourages us to look beyond the surface and appreciate those intricate details, the hidden complexities that we often take for granted.
It's like everything becomes a sign, pointing back to the Creator.
Right. And the Tafsir al-Amthal quotes Amir al-Mu'minin Ali, who said something really powerful about the mosquito. How could it be, even if all its creatures, including its birds and beasts, its tame and untamed, its various types, breeds, groups, and species, its slow and intelligent ones, gathered together to produce a mosquito, they would not be able to create it, nor would they know the means to bring it into existence. Their intellects would be bewildered by the knowledge of it and would become lost. Their powers would be exhausted and limited, and they would return humbled, weary, acknowledging their subjugation and confessing their inability to create it, admitting their weakness and annihilating it.
That's intense.
It is, right. No matter how much knowledge or technology we accumulate, we can never truly replicate the act of creation. It's a humbling reminder of our place in the grand scheme of things.
And it connects back to that idea of using examples. The Tafsir al-Amthal emphasizes how important examples are in explaining complex ideas, making them accessible to everyone.
Right. It's about taking something tangible and using it to point to a deeper truth.
And the Quran is full of these kinds of examples, from everyday objects to cosmic phenomena. It's like a masterclass in communication.
It really is. But let's circle back to this idea of guidance and misguidance, because verse 26 touches on a really crucial point. It says, He misleads many thereby and guides many thereby. And He does not mislead except the defiantly disobedient. Now, this might seem a little confusing at first because
It sounds like Allah is directly causing people to be misled.
Right. And that seems to contradict the idea of free will.
Exactly. So how do we reconcile those two things?
Well, the Tafsir al-Amthal offers a really insightful explanation. It clarifies that guidance and misguidance, as described in the Quran, aren't about Allah forcing anyone down a particular path. It's more about
the natural consequences of our actions.
Precisely. Like, our choices have outcomes. They either bring us closer to Allah or further away.
It's cause and effect, basically.
Exactly. It's not about Allah predetermining our fate. It's about us shaping our own destiny through the choices we make.
It's like that analogy of the cliff. The closer you get to the edge, the more likely you are to fall. Moving towards the edge represents those choices that lead to misguidance, while moving away represents choosing the path of righteousness and seeking Allah's guidance.
Perfect analogy. It illustrates how we have the power to steer our own spiritual journey.
And the verse makes it clear that Allah only misguides those who are defiantly disobedient. So it's not like He's choosing who to guide or mislead. It's about us having the free will to choose our path and then being accountable for those choices.
Exactly. And Allah says in the Quran, "O you who have believed, if you fear Allah, He will grant you a criterion."
So when we are conscious of Allah, it opens us up to more guidance.
And likewise, if a person inclines towards bad deeds, it has negative consequences,
Yeah, that darkness begins to accumulate in their heart.
which can eventually lead them to denying their creator, as it says in the Quran.
That sounds like a really slippery slope, a bad path to go down.
And the Quran also says that when they deviated, Allah caused their hearts to deviate.
So it's not like it's arbitrary, but actually connected to our own choices.
It's more about removing the foundation necessary for guidance due to our actions. And that brings us to verse 27, which dives deeper into the characteristics of those who choose to disregard Allah's guidance, the defiantly disobedient or the alfezic one.
Okay, so who are these alfezic one? What makes them different?
Well, the verse describes them as those who break the covenant of Allah after contracting it and sever that which Allah has ordered to be joined and spread corruption on earth. It is they who are the losers.
Wow, that's a pretty heavy description. Let's break it down. What does it mean to break the covenant of Allah?
So the Tafsir al-Amthal explains that this isn't about a physical contract. It's about this natural covenant that exists between Allah and humanity. It's about acknowledging that inherent bond we have with our Creator.
So it's about living in accordance with our fitra, our true nature as beings created by Allah.
Exactly. That fitra is that innate disposition towards monotheism and seeking closeness to Allah that's embedded within every human soul.
It's like a built-in compass pointing us towards our Creator.
I love that. And when we misuse our faculties, neglect our spiritual development, or actively choose to disobey Allah, we're essentially breaking that covenant, going against our very nature.
It's like betraying our true selves and our relationship with the one who created us.
Exactly. And the Quran says, "Did I not enjoin upon you, O children of Adam, that you not worship Satan?"
That verse refers to our natural disposition towards serving God.
And it continues, "And that you worship me. This is a straight path."
So it's like Allah's reminding us of our true nature.
It is, and our purpose, as we discussed earlier. Now, the second trait is severing what Allah has ordered to be joined. And while this is often interpreted as specifically referring to cutting ties with family members, the Tafsir al-Amthal suggests a broader understanding.
So it's not just about family.
Right. It's about recognizing the importance of all the connections and bonds that Allah intends for us to maintain, whether it's between individuals, communities, or even our connection with Allah Himself.
It's about upholding that unity and harmony that Allah has established throughout creation.
Exactly. And breaking that covenant can manifest in so many ways, from neglecting our responsibilities towards others to severing ties with those who guide us towards Allah.
It's about disrupting that beautiful interconnectedness that He has created.
And then there's that third trait, spreading corruption on earth.
That was a little more straightforward, right?
Yeah, it encompasses any action that disrupts the balance and well-being of creation. The Tafsir al-Amthal highlights that those who've turned away from Allah and His guidance are more likely to engage in actions that harm themselves, others, and the environment.
It's like a ripple effect. Their disobedience to Allah ripples outwards, causing harm and disruption on a larger scale.
Exactly. And the verse concludes by saying, "It is they who are the losers."
That's a powerful statement. It highlights the ultimate consequences of choosing that path of disobedience and corruption.
It really contrasts with the blessings described in verse 2.25, right? Like there's a clear choice here, a path that leads to paradise and a path that leads to loss.
And it makes me think about the importance of family and how strong family bonds can actually help prevent that kind of corruption and disunity.
That's a great point. The Tafsir al-Amthal actually goes into quite a bit of detail about maintaining kinship ties in Islam.
Oh, I'm definitely interested in hearing more about that.
Well, it's fascinating stuff, and it ties in beautifully with everything we've been discussing about guidance and misguidance and the consequences of our choices.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more.
So you know how Islam places a huge emphasis on family, right?
Yeah, like maintaining those ties is a big deal.
Well, the Tafsir al-Amthal explains that it's not just about some abstract religious duty.
It has real-world implications.
Totally. Strong families are like the foundation of a healthy society.
Okay, I can see that. Like, if you have stable families, you're more likely to have...
Stable communities, less crime, all of that.
It's like each family is a building block, and the stronger those blocks are.
The stronger the whole structure of society becomes.
Makes sense.
And there's a hadith from the Prophet that captures this so beautifully. He said, Maintaining kinship ties populates homes and increases lifespans, even if the family members are not righteous.
Whoa, so even if there are, like, issues within a family,
Disagreements, challenges, whatever.
maintaining those ties is still super important.
It benefits everyone on a societal level. It's wild.
It is. It's like those bonds transcend individual differences.
Exactly. They're like the sacred thread that holds society together.
So even if your family drives you crazy sometimes,
Which, let's be real, everyone's family does at some point.
you got to make the effort.
Yeah, nurture those relationships. And the Tafsir Al-Amthal even provides some practical advice on how to do that. It quotes Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, who said, "Maintain your kinship ties even with a sip of water. The best way to maintain kinship ties is to refrain from harming them."
Okay, so it's not always about these grand gestures.
Sometimes it's just about showing up, offering a kind word, being there.
Those little things can make a big difference.
Huge. It's about consistency and sincerity more than anything.
And I think that's something we can all learn from, even outside the context of family. Just like being mindful of our interactions with others, making an effort to be kind and compassionate.
You got it. But there's another hadith that's worth mentioning here. It's from Imam al-Sajjad, and it's a bit more
Intense.
yeah. He warns against associating with those who sever kinship ties, saying that they're cursed in the Book of Allah.
Whoa, okay, that's serious.
It is. It shows how seriously Islam takes this issue.
It's not just some personal matter. It has, like, spiritual consequences.
Absolutely. But let's shift gears a bit. Remember that example of the mosquito?
Oh, yeah, the one that seems so random.
Well, it actually connects to this whole discussion about free will, which is a major theme throughout these verses.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does a mosquito relate to free will?
So remember how verse 2.26 says that Allah misleads many thereby and guides many thereby?
Yeah, that part always makes me stop and think.
Because it sounds like Allah is like directly controlling people's choices.
Which would contradict the whole idea of free will.
Exactly. But the Tafsir Al-Amthal comes to the rescue with this really insightful explanation.
Oh, right on me.
Okay, so it clarifies that guidance and misguidance, as described in the Quran, aren't about Allah forcing anyone down a specific path.
It's not like he's puppeteering our lives.
Nope. Instead, it's about the natural consequences of our actions and choices.
So we have the freedom to choose, but those choices have consequences.
Precisely. It's cause and effect, like we were talking about earlier. Allah gives us this incredible gift of free will, and with that gift comes the responsibility to use it wisely.
I like the way you put that. It's like we're given a map with all these different routes, and we get to choose which path we take. But each path has its own unique terrain, its own challenges.
That's such a good analogy, and that's what makes life so interesting, right? We're constantly making choices, navigating those different paths.
And shaping our own destinies in the process.
Exactly. And this idea ties in perfectly with that cliff analogy. Remember how the closer you get to the edge, the greater the risk of falling.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to be mindful of our choices.
Right. Moving towards the edge represents those choices that lead us astray, those that are more likely to result in negative consequences. While moving away from the edge represents choosing the path of righteousness, seeking Allah's guidance.
It's like a constant balancing act, trying to stay on the right path.
And seeking Allah's help every step of the way.
So guidance and misguidance aren't about Allah dictating our lives. It's about us making choices that align with His will or go against it.
And then experiencing the natural consequences of those choices.
Which brings us back to those defiantly disobedient, the al-Faziqwan.
Right. Verse 2.27 describes them as those who break Allah's covenant, sever ties, and spread corruption.
And the Tafsir Al-Amthal delves into each of those traits with a lot of depth.
But what I appreciate is that it doesn't approach these traits with a sense of judgment.
It's not about condemning people.
It's more about understanding, like, what might lead someone to make those choices? What might be going on beneath the surface?
It's recognizing the complexities of human behavior.
Exactly. And it's about offering a path back towards Allah's guidance.
So let's break down each trait a bit further. We talked about breaking Allah's covenant as going against our fitra, that natural inclination towards monotheism.
Right, that inherent desire for closeness to Allah.
And the Tafsir Al-Amthal explains that when we misuse our faculties, when we neglect our spiritual development, or actively choose to disobey Allah, we're essentially betraying that trust that He's placed in us.
It's like we've been given this incredible gift, this capacity for good, but we choose to squander it.
It's like throwing away a priceless treasure.
And it can manifest in so many ways. From neglecting our prayers to engaging in harmful behaviors to simply failing to use our talents and abilities to make the world a better place.
It's a reminder to be mindful of how we use those gifts Allah has given us, to strive to live a life that honors that trust.
Now, moving on to the second trait, severing what Allah has ordered to be joined. We talked about how this goes beyond just family ties. It's about all those connections and relationships that Allah wants us to maintain.
Right, it's about recognizing that interconnectedness that exists throughout creation.
And the Tafsir al-Amthal highlights how breaking these connections can lead to all sorts of negative consequences, from broken trust and promises to division and conflict within families and communities.
It's like creating these cracks in the fabric of society.
Exactly, and it disrupts that beautiful harmony that Allah intended.
And then there's that third trait, spreading corruption on earth.
This one's a bit more straightforward. It's about engaging in actions that harm ourselves, others, and the environment.
Like polluting the planet, being dishonest in our dealings, causing harm to living beings.
All of that. And the Tafsir al-Amthal emphasizes that those who've turned away from Allah are more likely to engage in these kinds of destructive behaviors because they've lost that sense of
Accountability.
sacredness.
Both. They fail to see the sanctity of life, the interconnectedness of all things. They act as if their choices have no consequences, as if they're not part of a larger web of creation.
And that's where that final statement of verse 25 comes in. It is they who are the losers.
It's a powerful reminder that our choices have lasting impacts, both in this life and in the hereafter.
It makes me wonder, how do we avoid falling into those traps? How can we make sure we're on the path of guidance? And it leads us perfectly into the next section where we'll explore verses 28 and 29, which offer some profound insights into the nature of life, death, and the vastness of creation.
Okay, I'm ready for the next leg of this journey. Let's keep exploring. Lead the way. I'm ready to see where these verses take us.
Okay, so get this. We're about to go from really deep reflections on human behavior
To the cosmos.
to the vastness of creation.
That's quite a leap.
But that's what's so cool about the Quran, right? It seamlessly connects these different realms.
It's like zooming out from this super close-up view of our lives to this panoramic shot of the entire universe.
Exactly. And verses 28 and 29 do that beautifully. So remember how verse 28 starts. It asks this really powerful question. How can you disbelieve in Allah when you were lifeless and He brought you to life? Then He will cause you to die. Then He will bring you back to life. And then to Him you will be returned.
It's like, whoa, hold up a second. Let's think about this.
It's a reality check, right? It forces us to confront our very existence.
From where we came from to where we're going.
Exactly. And the Tafsir al-Amthal really emphasizes the elegance of this verse, how it captures this whole cycle of human life in such a concise and profound way.
It's like poetry almost.
It is. So it starts by reminding us that we were once nothing, lifeless, and then Allah, with His infinite power, brings us into being.
It's so humbling when you think about it that way. We didn't create ourselves. We were created.
Nothing.
Yeah. And then the verse acknowledges death, which is a natural part of life, right?
Right.
But then it goes on to affirm the reality of resurrection, that we will be brought back to life after death.
And that's huge, especially for those who might doubt the hereafter. It's like Allah saying, look, I brought you into existence once. I can certainly do it again.
It's like the ultimate proof of His power.
Right. And what's interesting is that the Tafsir al-Amthal points out how this verse subtly refutes the concept of reincarnation.
Oh, how so?
Well, reincarnation is about this cyclical return to this world, right? But this verse emphasizes a linear progression, a single cycle of life, death, and resurrection.
So it's not about being reborn over and over again. It's about this journey toward Allah that continues even after death, ultimately culminating in that final return to Him.
You got it. And that phrase, to Him you will be returned, it really drives home that point. No matter what path we take in this life, our ultimate destination is back to our Creator.
It puts things into perspective for sure.
It does. And then verse 29 shifts the focus from the human journey to the vastness of creation. It says, "It is He who created for you all that is on the earth. Then He directed Himself to the heaven and made them 7 heavens, and He is knowing of all things."
This verse always blows my mind. It's like we were just talking about our individual lives, and now we're zooming out to the entire universe.
Right. It's this incredible shift in perspective.
And it starts by acknowledging that everything on earth has been created for us.
For our benefit, yeah.
It's like all the resources, the beauty, the diversity of life, it's all a gift.
A gift with responsibilities, though.
Oh, absolutely. We're not meant to just take and consume. We have a duty to care for creation, to be mindful of its resources, to use them wisely and sustainably.
Exactly. It's that concept of Khalifa being Allah's stewards on earth.
We're entrusted with the well-being of this planet and all its inhabitants. It's a huge honor, but also heavy responsibility.
For sure. But then the verse takes us even further. Beyond the confines of our planet to the vast expanse of the heavens, it says, "Then he directed himself to the heaven and made them 7 heavens, and he is knowing of all things."
Okay, so 7 heavens. That always makes me wonder.
It's one of those concepts that really stretches our imagination, right?
Totally. And there are different interpretations of it, right?
Yeah, the Tafsir al-Amthal mentions a few. Some scholars think it refers to the 7 planets known to ancient astronomers.
Others say it represents the different layers of the atmosphere.
Right. And then there's the possibility that 7 isn't meant to be taken literally, but that it signifies abundance.
Like there are countless heavens beyond our comprehension.
Exactly. And that's the interpretation that really resonates with me. The idea that what we can see and observe is just a tiny fraction of what's actually out there.
It's mind-blowing.
It is. And the Tafsir al-Amthal emphasizes that the repetition of 7 heavens throughout the Quran suggests it's meant to be taken literally.
So it's not just some poetic expression.
It's a deliberate statement about the vastness and complexity of Allah's creation.
And it gets even crazier when you consider that all the stars and planets we can see are just part of the first heaven.
Meaning there are 6 more realms beyond our current observation and scientific understanding.
It's almost impossible to grasp.
It is. And that's where the Tafsir al-Amthal's inclusion of the Palomar Observatory's description of the universe becomes so powerful.
Oh yeah, that was amazing. It talks about how even with the most advanced telescopes, we can only see a tiny sliver of the universe.
A billion light years.
And beyond that, there's this immense, awe-inspiring dark space filled with even more galaxies.
It's a humbling reminder that our knowledge is constantly evolving, and there's always more to learn about the universe and its creator.
It really puts things into perspective and makes me think about that mosquito example again.
How so?
Well, if we find so much complexity and wonder in a creature that's so small, imagine what other wonders are hidden within those vast and unexplored realms of the 7 heavens.
Exactly. It's an invitation to keep exploring, to never lose that sense of awe and wonder at the magnificence of Allah's creation.
What an incredible journey this has been. We've explored the beauty of paradise, the importance of faith and deeds, the complexities of free will, and the mind-boggling vastness of creation.
It's been a whirlwind tour of some pretty profound concepts.
And it's amazing how these verses, revealed over 1,400 years ago, continue to resonate with us today, offering guidance, inspiration, and the sense of wonder that just transcends time and space.
It speaks to the timeless wisdom of the Quran.
And it leaves us with this lingering question: what other wonders await us in those unexplored realms of the 7 heavens? What other secrets of creation are waiting to be unveiled?
It's a question that should ignite our curiosity and inspire us to keep seeking knowledge and understanding.
And on that note, we come to the end of our deep dive. Thank you for joining us on this journey of exploration, and may your own exploration of these verses and the Tafsir al-Amthal continue to enrich your understanding and deepen your connection with the Quran.